Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close Up, the longest government shutdown in U.S. history is over. What comes next for health care subsidies, SNAP benefits, and Iowa farmers?
I'm optimistic that we'll have fantastic news to share in a very short period of time.
The funding details will still need worked out before construction can start on a long-awaited soccer stadium in Des Moines.
I'm tired of the working class getting dangled over a volcano, so that's why I'm running as an...
And he's running as an independent to represent Iowa's 2nd District. Why Dave Bashaw says he's the best voice to represent Northeast Iowa in Congress.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. I'm Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker. Well, the federal government is finally back open after a record-setting 43-day shutdown. And that shutdown rippled into everyday life. Federal workers went weeks without pay. Families packed food pantries after their SNAP benefits froze. Travelers were left stranded in airports. President Trump signed the funding bill into law Wednesday night.
And it's an honor now to sign this incredible bill and get our country working again. Thank you.
That bill signing came just hours after the U.S. House passed the measure on a mostly party-line vote. Democrats wanted to extend an enhanced tax credit that lowers the cost of health coverage through the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. For weeks, Democrats refused to vote to reopen the government until that demand was met. But last week, 8 senators broke with their party and voted with Republicans on a deal that did not include the health care tax credits. Those federal Affordable Care Act payments were expanded in 2021, and those expanded payments are set to expire at the end of the year. Without them, some Iowans could see premiums double. Although the shutdown has ended, both political parties say the fight over health care policy is far from over. Democrats in Congress wanted to extend the Obamacare subsidies before agreeing to reopen the government. But the final funding deal didn't include that, igniting frustration within their own party.
It's a travesty for hardworking families and people whose healthcare costs are already unaffordable, and I would say it is an outright betrayal.
Democrat Zach Walz is running for Iowa's U.S. Senate seat, outraged by the outcome in Washington, one he says sticks Iowans with rising costs.
As a result, there are going to be over 100,000 Iowans whose healthcare costs are going to sharply increase, 25,000 Iowans who are going to lose their health insurance altogether. That's not acceptable, and if that's the best that Chuck Schumer can do, he shouldn't stay in the job.
Another Democrat in the Senate race, Nathan Sage, is also criticizing his party's leadership after some Senate Democrats joined Republicans to end the shutdown.
We're all together on this united front of like, hey, we need to stand up for the ACA tax extensions. We need to work on this, and then go figure 8 Senate Democrats decide to drop the ball. And, you can't control your caucus. You shouldn't be the leader of it.
Sage says the shutdown caused needless suffering without securing affordable health care for working families. Senate Republicans have agreed to vote on health care before the end of the year. Sage says that's not enough.
And it seemed like all these last 40 days that we went through were all for nothing. And working class people are still struggling, still going through the problems, still trying to figure out how they're going to afford their health care insurance now. And we're going to work with Republicans on a hope and a dream. Doesn't make much sense to me.
We also reached out to Democrat Josh Turek, who's running for U.S. Senate, but did not hear back.
I don't think it's ever caving when you're actually taking care of the American people.
Republican Congressman Zach Nunn says the deal was long overdue.
There is no reason that it took 40 days to end up in the exact same place we effectively started.
He says Americans needed their SNAP benefits restored. Military members and furloughed workers needed their paychecks. Still, he says lawmakers should take action on health care by the end of the year.
This is a 2026 issue, so we need to get after it now. But challengingly, we've also been stuck in this 40-day battle of not paying anyone, and that's really a tragedy for the American people. I want to compliment the 8 senators who came over and moved this bill forward. Bipartisanship in Washington still works.
When it comes to the Obamacare tax credits, Nunn says he supports a 1-year extension.
I don't think we want to have just a blanket extension into forever of COVID-era subsidies, but we do want to make sure that healthcare is affordable for folks.
And wants broader change to healthcare policy.
We also want to be able to drive down the cost of healthcare. We've seen a number of these subsidies drive it up for everybody, whether you're on the ACA or not, by double digits. That's not how healthcare should work, and it certainly impacts people not only on the subsidies, 40 million Americans, It impacts all 350 million Americans who need healthcare to be successful.
And this morning, we're joined by KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford to talk about all of this. Thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure.
Well, we saw at the beginning of the shutdown the parties fighting over who was going to come out of this the winner. Now that the shutdown is over, what do you see the political fallout of all of this being on each of the parties?
I think we have an even more disgruntled electorate population than we had beforehand. Democrats tried to use the shutdown, including Iowa. Well, there are no Iowa Democrats in Congress, but Democrats nationwide wanted to use the shutdown to try to leverage that into some extension of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. Republicans, including Iowa Republicans, have always detested Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And they were able to get enough Democrats to go ahead and support lifting the shutdown without that compromise on health care. So I don't know if we're there with the bipartisanship that Congressman Nunn talks about yet. But I think at this point, Republicans in Iowa and nationwide own the health care issue, because they kept saying Obamacare is terrible. The president says it's a disaster. At one point he said, I've got a concept of a plan. I'm not quite sure what that means, but we need some details. What are you going to replace it with? So it's on Republicans now to come up with a plan. Just because there will be a vote doesn't mean it's going to pass, the extension vote.
We saw a lot of pain during this shutdown. I mean, it was the longest in American history, and I think we all remember the images of the people standing in long lines outside of the pantries and the chaos in the airports. You know, do electorates, do they place that blame on both political parties? Does one more than, obviously both of the parties are trying to blame each other. Republicans seem to be saying right now, you know, had the Democrats, you know, caved or changed their line earlier, all of this could have been avoided.
The Republican line has always been, we wouldn't have to do this, it's the Democrats holding everything hostage. However, all the polling I've seen, and there was a lot done during the past 6 weeks or so of the shutdown, that said more people, and I think a majority of people blame this more on Republicans. A good third or so blamed it on Democrats as well, but more blamed this on Republicans. And Republicans are going to have to deal with that in the coming elections.
The other thing we've seen is just some tension in party fighting within the Democratic Party. I mean, you saw it there between Zach Walz and Nathan Sage, who are both running to be in the U.S. Senate as Democrats, wanting Chuck Schumer to step down. You know, there's some ire among voters against their own party for not holding strong on, you know, health care extensions, but there aren't any Iowa Democrats currently in Congress. So how does this play for our state?
Well, Iowa Democrats are in a deep hole. They're very much in a deep hole in Iowa. If you look at the party ratios in the Iowa House and the Iowa Senate, Democrats are way far away from even being competitive at this point. And Democrats in Washington are facing a government which has controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency by Republicans. So Democrats are extremely frustrated, and we saw this come out as part of a generational shift against Senator Schumer and some of the younger Democrats saying we need to fight harder and get rid of our older leadership. So Democrats, for a long time, I would say going back to Ronald Reagan in a way, are still trying to figure out who they are and what they stand for. Republicans have been much more effective as a united political party. But at this point, the interesting question is, with this vote coming up on the Epstein files, of course, how many Republicans will desert the president and vote to have those released? That will start to indicate whether or not there's a little slack or a little vulnerability among Republicans nationwide, which includes Iowa Republicans.
And overall, it feels like 2026 could be right around the corner, right? Because we're seeing all these candidates pop up and, you know, primaries and, you know, conversations among the candidates, but it's still, you know, a year away. How much do you think this will stick in voters' minds, the government shutdown?
Well, you know, the old adage is a week is a long time in politics. I mean, are we going to invade Venezuela? And all sorts of things can bump other things off the stage. But midterms are always a referendum on the incumbent administration. And Republicans, at least some now after this shutdown, are starting to sweat a little bit in that regard. They're still extremely competitive. Democrats are still in quite a bit of a hole. But particularly because the president is very concerned to hold on to control of the House and the Senate, Because if he doesn't, if the Democrats control the House, they could launch some investigations of him. So this will be a very nationalized midterm election because the president has a lot of stake, and Republicans have more money than God has. And they're going to be launching ads already. We've seen some on TV already. So we're in for a long, long period in which a lot of people may say, what's on Netflix tonight?
I know those ads are like almost already starting to pop up. And we only have about 30 seconds left. But to your point, even though this seems more of a national issue, it was at state, this probably will impact the lawmakers at the state level, or it will impact, Iowa Democrats and Iowa Republicans, the national issues.
Sure. I mean, Iowa Democrats want to become competitive again here in Iowa. They have some plausibly good candidates. We don't know how they actually perform in the field yet. But Republicans are in a strong position, and they're determined to defend that position.
Well, Dennis, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time. Well, still to come on Close Up, the ripple effects of Congress's new funding bill targets hemp products, how that will work, and how the bill also helps struggling farmers get back to business. Plus, we also hear from the newest candidate for Iowa's 2nd Congressional District on how he'd represent Iowans differently if he makes it to Washington. The longest government shutdown in history ended late last week, and so did the wait for SNAP benefits for tens of thousands of Iowans who rely on them. Iowa HHS loaded the full November SNAP benefits onto EBT cards at least a day after the government reopened. Now, one part of that new spending bill has some Iowa business owners up in arms. It also has many farmers breathing a sigh of relief. It extends provisions in the 2018 Farm Bill, including help for farmers to process their loan applications. But it also closes a loophole in that bill that made many hemp-based products legal in low doses. We find out what this new spending bill means for both industries.
The combines are parked and the fields are quiet. With most of the harvest complete across Iowa, farmers are turning their focus to next season's crop.
That means trying to buy inputs at a reasonable price. It means trying to secure our seed and chemicals.
Aaron Lehman leads the Iowa Farmers Union. He says farmers are struggling to stay afloat.
Most farmers are losing money on every acre that they're growing corn, every acre that they're growing soybeans right now. With all this uncertainty, it's important for farmers to have some security.
That uncertainty grew in September when an extension of the Farm Bill expired. Funding ran out for key programs that help farmers with financing.
They were just left hanging.
Jennifer Zwagerman runs the Drake University Agricultural Law Center. She says a new funding package for the U.S. Department of Agriculture would deliver some much-needed certainty.
So as farmers are making plans over the winter and working to secure funding and pre-ordering seeds and chemicals and all those things, they know that the programs that may have been guaranteeing loans, helping with cost share for certain things, all of those are going to be there, and they're funded for this next year.
The package extends farm policy that was first passed in 2018. Lehman says farm conditions have changed a lot since then.
It's a very tumultuous time with trade tensions, with health insurance costs going up, with the USDA cuts.
The federal spending plan also includes major changes for the hemp industry.
It includes a rewrite of the 2018 provisions that approved hemp production, and it will officially ban, essentially, it closes a loophole that existed where we've seen sort of this huge rise of edibles and the drinks and things like that.
Hemp-based products like cream to treat pain, THC edibles, and drinks would all become illegal. Local companies like Happy Can tell KCCI it would effectively close their business. Happy Can's CEO says they've been working ahead of time, trying to spread awareness about their product.
In the advocacy world, we've been watching this for over a year, and we've been doing advocacy work to try to educate people about hemp and what it is, how it can be used.
The company's founder says she was shocked by the legislation. She says she prepared for some extra federal regulations, not a total ban.
We definitely didn't feel it would be looped into the spending bill, which we feel should not be the case. We feel like it should definitely be something that is done separately to avoid a prohibition.
The recriminalizing of hemp products doesn't start immediately. That ban would take effect in a year. Kicking off a huge stadium project in Des Moines after the break, we hear from the visionary behind it and the hurdles that still need to be cleared before construction can start. A $90 million soccer stadium in development in the gateway to downtown Des Moines is closer to becoming reality. Now, the project has been kicked around for years, and details for how it will be funded have changed. KCCI's Todd Magel sat down with Kyle Kraus to hear the new plans to bring in a pro women's team in addition to a men's team and the next steps before the games can begin.
Thanks for joining us. Glad you were able to talk to you. What is it like not to have come and go anymore?
Oh, I think it's certainly a large part of my life, a large part of my family's life, my kids, my family, and so certainly that part of the memories are there of doing it. but I think making the decision to have sold it and now it's somebody else's, and so you look ahead, move on.
So the other big story in your life probably is the soccer stadium. So let's talk about that. Where are we in this long process of getting this thing built?
Well, thanks for bringing that up, the long process. Yes, it has been. People have been patient. It's been a long process, which things are complicated and they take time. And I think where we are today is we're approaching a deadline in the next couple of days of getting this solved. We're down to a few million left in the capital stack, and we feel good about getting that closed with help from the city, with help from the state, with help from private donors to get this whole thing done in the next couple of days.
So what is the status of the project? Because we've been reporting for years on the funding, the design, the location. What should people know who maybe haven't followed this every day or every month to know about where this is in the process?
Well, perfect. So Iowa Soccer Development Foundation is the nonprofit that was created to own the stadium. And that's the one doing the capital stack, the raising. And so we talk in the pronoun of we as ISDF is doing the stadium. The stadium is going to be built right behind me over here on the former DICO site. Get a chance to transform a Superfund site into a stadium. We'll talk about tenants in a moment, into a stadium, and then have a whole development around that of people with housing, living, eating, drinking, enjoying the activities. Gets driven by a downtown stadium. And from a tenant standpoint, we just announced the intent to have a women's team along with the men's team inside the stadium.
What was the dream? What is your goal there in that site?
The dream is really to have that opportunity to have an entertainment option for Central Iowa, for the state of Iowa, and then be able certainly to activate the area around that and make Central Iowa more vibrant with what stadiums can create from an activity standpoint.
Now, if all goes well with the funding, stadium construction would start in 2026, with women's games starting in the fall of 2028. Men's games would start the following spring of 2029. When we come back, the newest candidate to launch a campaign for Iowa's 2nd Congressional District and why he's running as an independent. The race for Iowa's 2nd Congressional District continues to grow. Republican incumbent Representative Ashley Hinson, who currently holds the seat, announced a U.S. Senate campaign that makes the District 2 race wide open. There are currently 3 Republicans who will compete in a primary. 4 Democrats are hoping for their party's nomination in next year's election. Last week, Dave Bashaw announced he's running for District 2 as an independent. I talked with him about what he plans to focus on in his congressional campaign. What made you decide to run for Congress, and why you decided now is the time to jump in?
The reason why I decided to run at this moment is because I believe that the country is looking for an alternative. A lot of people that grew up in families just like mine has seen the system fail them time and time again. And if we want to change the system, we can't keep sending the same people that broke the system and are continuously breaking the system.
Why run as an independent?
I have no trust in the two parties that not only have betrayed us time and time again as workers, but use us as a political pawn, as we can see in the most recent government shutdown. My question to the two parties is, how dare you? How dare you use my family, my friends, and my community to play your political games? Every one of those senators, every one of those representatives ate every single night and every single morning while people were going without SNAP benefits here in Iowa. I'm tired of the working class getting dangled over a volcano. So that's why I'm running as an independent.
Tell me about some of your policy priorities. If you were elected to Congress, what are the top couple issues that you would want to tackle first?
So one of the main ones that I think that we can focus on now is healthcare access. And also healthcare insurance. We have a broken housing system that we need to address. Another one is looking back at our manufacturing and the collapse of manufacturing and industrialized labor in this country. We don't build nothing anymore. I'm not entirely anti-tariff, but if we're going to be tariffing countries and putting regulations on products coming into America, the government needs to step in, and we need to incentivize manufacturing and production directly here in this country. We have a stalemated Congress. Effectively, they use the excuse of the filibuster and the need for X number of votes rather than 50+1 to do nothing. You know, they can't deliver on any fundamental, substantial change for the American people. What we need is to maybe reevaluate this representative democracy model that we have. 26 states in our nation right now have something called citizens ballot initiatives or ballot referendums. And that's where if you collect enough signatures in that respective state from the respective districts, the issue that you're pushing for can be put on the ballot and the citizens can vote directly. That's called direct democracy rather than indirect democracy. If 26 states can do that across the country, I don't see why we can't implement a national ballot initiative at the country-wide level.
If you were talking directly to the people of Iowa's 2nd District, why are you the best candidate in the race? Why should they vote for you?
I've come up from, living in a trailer, growing up in a trailer when I was young, to living on my own land that I bought with my own money at 19 years old. I worked in the chicken hatcheries, and I worked in the meat processing plants and the detasseling fields, and I busted every day so I could get my little slice of Iowa. That's not attainable for someone these days. In my opinion, I think we should be able to afford a house and afford a yard for our dogs and our children to run around and be able to pay that off before our kids end up having to go off to college and get out on their own to get their own house. So I'm the best candidate in the race because I've lived it and I remember where I came from.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for making time to chat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
And thanks for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.